Okay, so we've done some 2D tracking. So what I've got here is the 2D track, which is going along and it looks kind of great. The problem is I kind of get there. And what's happened is that I've got like a tracker in here. Let me have a look at the tracker. And the tracker goes along here. And then we get to there. And the problem is that the picture frames, they leave the kind of the filmed footage, and so we don't really kind of have anything to track anymore. I mean, what we could do is we could kind of, at this point, we could take this and we could put it on the lamp, but it's kind of that's a little bit of a problem because we're going to have to do some kind of crazy stuff, which is go into options and start playing around with these kind of settings, and they are a little bit complicated. Or we're going to have to do something called offset tracking, and that is really complicated as well, and After Effects is not particularly good at it. So what do we do in this stage? So this is a bit of a problem, even though our track actually looks pretty decent. I mean, it's kind of like we press play and it's kind of sticking to it. It's looking all right. The problem is that we run out of footage. So how do we stop that? So I'm going to go into my motion tracker and I'm going to delete the track, and I'm going to delete all of this data and just reset this layer. Okay, and I'm going to turn this off, and then on this layer I'm going to put track camera. Now, track camera is a little bit more complicated. What it will do is it will 3D track everything and create a camera. And I will show you what that means. It will take a bit of computing because this is 8.5 seconds long of footage. Depending on your computer, this could take a short time or a long time. On my one, it will probably take not very long because I'm not really doing a lot. I'm not kind of streaming anything at the same time or doing anything like that. But I am recording, as you can see. I'm recording the screen, so that is going to slow my computer down a little bit, because what it's doing is instead of tracking one point, it is tracking every point. Anything that it thinks is a good track point, it will make a guess and it will start tracking it. Up here you can see what it's doing, and so you can see that it's done 60% odd, and it's going to take 13, 14, 12 seconds to do this because it is going to find every single feature on here. We'll get into kind of more of the advanced stuff a little bit later, but at the moment now what it's going to do is it's going to solve the camera, and what that means is down here we've got all of these pretty little points. They do mean something, and I don't know what they mean, but I'm sure they mean something. So I'm going to pause the video and find that one out. Well, I had a good old hunt around, and actually it turns out that these mean nothing, apparently. Who knows? So anyway, when we go through our footage and we go kind of clicking through it, we can see we've got all of these pretty little X's all over the place. And those are basically representing points on the footage that After Effects thinks will make decent track points. And so I don't know, I thought it might be that green is better and red is worse, or maybe red is better and green is worse. I don't know. But there is some reason for it. So when you kind of click over them, you get this weird target thing. And this target helps you, it basically finds a point between 3 points, or if you press, I believe it's Control or Option, you can click over and you can select a whole bunch of points and it will find the median. But we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to find a point, and you can find points along here that look like they fit. So this one looks like it's along the wall. If you click it and then you get this little X in front, you can move it down, up and down the wall, and you can see it sort of sticks to it pretty much. And so what we're going to do is we're going to declare that to be like a good point of kind of reference, but we'll get to that in a sec. I want to show you what all of these points mean. So what I'm going to do is do that thing before, where I'm going to select absolutely every single point on here. I'm going to select every single point on here. I'm going to do that again. Pretend the previous bit didn't happen. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to create 292 nulls and a camera. oh, it's going to take a bit of time because it's going to generate all of these things. You can see it banging these out. They're little individual objects, and it's going to take a certain amount of seconds, 6 to be exact, but on your computer it might take longer. And I'm going to show you what it generates and to see if you sort of understand it, and hopefully you will. So I'm going to look in the custom view, and then what it's going to show me, it's going to show me all of these nulls. Don't worry about that. I moved the footage by mistake. But what I want to try and do is I just want to spin around my scene. So I'm just going to use the unified camera tool and go into custom view. Where is it gone? So grab that, and I'm going to have to do that again because I did too many undos. Redo, change effect. There we go. Because I did way too much moving around and stuff, and I'm doing too much with the meter. So what you can see there is a whole bunch of little points, okay? And it's quite difficult to see them, but essentially, I'm just going to zoom out. All those points represent what the computer guesses is all of the objects in relationship to this camera. It's created a camera, and this camera replicates me, like me moving. So when we move this around, we can see that, you know, in very sort of abstract terms, we can see that it is kind of trying to create like a representation of, like, here's the wall, and here are some of the objects. There's the kind of like the popcorn jar, and this is the front of the shelf. And all of these represent sort of these kind of points here in space. So that's what it's doing. And so you can see that it's kind of creating something which is a little bit more powerful than the regular tracker, because what it's doing is, so I'm just going to grab all of these and delete them. Okay, so now everything should run a bit quicker, as it does. And so go back to the active camera, and now we can see this. And we go click onto our footage and the camera tracker, and we can see all our points again. Okay, so what that means is it knows where things are in Z. In Z is this direction, this way, and X is this direction, and Y is this direction. So it knows how far things are away. So this kind of gives us a little bit of a helping hand, because we know that if I go to the arrow here and I grab these 3 points here, which is the bottom of the picture frame, the other bottom of the picture frame, and if you want, you can grab them specifically. And now what we've got is we've got these 3 points, and those are basically on the wall. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a solid layer. Ding! And what it's created is a solid, which is just a flat object, and it has stuck that to the wall. So what we can do now is we can rotate it. So I'm going to rotate it along its Z axis to get it in line with the wall. And we can see that that is kind of roughly in line with the wall. So now when we move through our footage, it doesn't matter how, if we leave the, if our trackers leave the frame, because it's slightly irrelevant, because what it means is that, I'm just previewing this so you can see it, it just means that it still knows where it is in 3D space. It's just pushed it, it just kind of uses another tracking point, because it's no longer tracking the objects, it's tracking where the camera is and making that move, if that makes sense. So now these stick to the wall, and if it leaves the frame, then it carries on going regardless. It looks like it's slipping, but it's not. It's just that the objects in front are moving faster. A little bit like when you're sitting on a train, and when you pass a station, you can see, you know, things pass very quickly, but the mountains in the background don't move as fast. It's the same thing. It's called parallaxing, and we can use that to our advantage. So we've got our graphics. I'm going to, and what I want to do now is I want to replace this kind of flat object with my graphics. So we could kind of bring it in and move it around, but actually we've already positioned this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the thing that I want to replace in the composition, grab the object, press Option or Alt, and then pull it in. And then what it will do is it will drop it on top and just replace it like for like with exactly the same position. So when I move this through, then I should have this object still tracked but in the same position. Okay, so our graphics now are in approximately where those picture frames are. If I was to duplicate this, so I'm just going to go onto the object and then press Control D or Command D if you're using a Mac. So I've duplicated it. Now I can move it. So I'm going to move it in Z using the 3D transformations. And now I'm going to move it down a bit. This object is now closer to us because in relationship to the camera. So if I press play, you're going to get a slightly different effect because now it's going to look like the text is part of the scene and it's on like a piece of glass and that is behind it. And we're going to play around with that in a minute. So great. So now what we've got is we've got a scene. So I'm just going to sort of play that from the beginning because it's previewed. So you can see that now is moving, and it's moving kind of slightly quicker because it's in relationship to the camera, it's closer to us. That sort of makes sense. So I'm going to duplicate the graphics. So Control D, and on graphics 2, I'm going to change the text to something else. Whoa, exciting stuff. I'm going to go back into here. And this graphics, I want to change that. So again, doing the same thing, Alt, drop it on top, and it will replace it with that graphic. So this is an independent thing. Right, so this is great, but what can we do with it? Okay, so I'm going to show you one technique. It's not the best technique, but it's kind of okay. And I'm going to create something called an adjustment layer. And adjustment layers are great because what they do is they are they're kind of like 3D layers, and what you can do is you can do invisible things on them, but I'm going to show you that in a minute. What we're going to do is going to parent it to this, so that this is going to be part. They're invisible, and so you can put effects on them. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to parent it. But if I parent it, it's just going to stick to it as it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Shift and then parent it. And now it puts it in exactly the same position as that, which is kind of what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it underneath because we don't want to, because it will do stuff underneath, it will do an effect. And I'm going to scale it so it is the right size as this frame. And you don't need to make it exact, but you need to make it like not overlap. And if it doesn't fit, use these arrow keys to move it into place. Okay, so that will do. Close enough. Right, I'm going to put a very simple effect on this. I'm going to go to Effect and Blur, and I'm going to add just a Gaussian blur. Very simple kind of effect, and I'm going to put like a blur of like 5 or something like that. So, what's it doing? Not much at the moment, but I'll keep blurring. And what it's doing is it's blurring all of the stuff that's behind it. Okay, so when we go to the beginning and we press play, and this is going to take longer because we now put an effect on it, and also I'm recording the screen at the same time. I'm just going to press play and record, preview, and then what's going to happen is you're going to get like a little bit of you'll see the effect. It's taking a while, so I have to talk about stuff, but maybe I shouldn't, I don't know. Anyway, so I'm trying to give it the impression that it's sort of like a piece of like frosted glass or something like that, and so it kind of gives kind of quite a nice kind of effect. It doesn't look great when it's still, but it looks really good when it's moving. And And also because it's an effect layer, you can do anything you like. So you can turn it into anything. And so that's what's kind of cool about it. So that will do for now. So now when we kind of put it through and press play, you can see it's kind of like blurring everything behind, which gives kind of quite a nice sort of 3D effect. You can do whatever thing you want on it. So you could go to distort and then turbulent displace, and you could kind of make it almost kind of make it look as if it's kind of like messing with it. It's like rippled glass or something like that. And this will take longer because it's a distortion effect. So I'll just press play and we'll preview it. And so it's going to just take a little bit longer. Every time you stack effects, you end up with kind of more things. If you do have this problem, I'm going to stick it down to third resolution. And third resolution will make this whole thing a little bit quicker. Allegedly. And press play. And so what this is giving the impression of is that it's like everything that goes through it gets slightly distorted. And again, it gives it a sort of a different sort of look. And you can kind of play around with these to your heart's content, and you can kind of create some kind of mad stuff with it. So that is kind of 3D tracking. And what we're going to do is we are going to take that and we're going to kind of create some kind of cool graphics with it, and then we're going to sort of move on and do some other things. So that's that for now.